David had always been different from other kids. While his friends played video games and watched movies, he spent his nights staring at the stars through an old telescope his grandfather gave him. Now, at 32, he worked as a radio astronomer at one of the world's most advanced observatories in Chile. The place was perfect for someone like him, quiet, isolated, and far from the noise of city life. His life hadn't been easy lately. 6 months ago, his father passed away from a heart attack. The man who taught him to love the stars was gone, leaving David feeling more alone than ever. His marriage had also fallen apart earlier that year. His wife couldn't understand why he preferred spending nights listening to space signals rather than being home with her. She left him for someone who worked normal hours and wasn't obsessed with finding life in the universe. Now David lived alone in a small apartment near the observatory. His days were simple: sleep during the morning, eat lunch alone, then head to work when the sun went down. He had convinced himself this was enough. After all, he was doing important work. Every night, he listened to radio waves from deep space, hoping to find something that would prove humans weren't alone in the universe. On this particular Tuesday night, the sky was clearer than usual. David could see millions of stars without any clouds blocking his view. He arrived at the observatory around sunset and began his usual routine. He checked all the equipment, adjusted the massive radio dishes, and started scanning different frequencies. The work had become automatic after years of practice. Most nights were the same. He would hear the usual sounds of space, cosmic background radiation, signals from pulsars, and the general noise of the universe. But tonight felt different somehow. David couldn't explain it, but he had a strange feeling that something important was about to happen. Around midnight, while scanning a frequency band near the constellation Andromeda, David heard something unusual. It wasn't the random noise he was used to hearing. This signal had a pattern, a rhythm that seemed almost like music. He stopped eating his sandwich and leaned closer to his instruments. The pattern repeated every 30 seconds, 3 short pulses followed by 2 long ones. Then a pause. It was too organized to be natural. David's heart started beating faster. In all his years of searching, he had never heard anything like this. He quickly recorded the signal and ran it through his computer programs. The software confirmed what he already suspected. This wasn't coming from any known source. It wasn't a satellite, a pulsar, or interference from Earth. The signal was coming from somewhere far beyond our solar system. David sat back in his chair, hardly believing what he was seeing on his screens. This could be it, the proof that intelligent life existed somewhere else in the universe. But he knew he had to be careful. Many astronomers had thought they found alien signals before, only to discover they were wrong. He spent the next 2 hours analyzing the signal from every possible angle. He checked if it could be coming from a secret military satellite or some new type of star he didn't know about, but every test confirmed the same thing. This signal was artificial, intelligent, and coming from incredibly far away. At around 2 in the morning, David decided to step outside for some fresh air. His mind was racing with possibilities. If this really was a signal from aliens, his life would change forever. The whole world would change. He walked out of the observatory and looked up at the star-filled sky. That's when he saw the light. At first, David thought it might be a plane or a satellite, but this light was different. It was much brighter than anything he had seen before, and it was moving in ways that didn't make sense. The light seemed to dance across the sky, changing direction instantly without slowing down. As David watched in amazement, the light began to get bigger and brighter. It was coming toward him. His scientific mind told him to run back inside and call for help, but his curiosity kept him frozen in place. The light descended slowly and silently until it was hovering just a few hundred feet above the observatory. David could now see that the light was coming from some kind of craft. It was nothing like the spaceships he had seen in movies. This object seemed to be made of pure light, constantly shifting and changing shape like liquid silver. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Then, without any warning, a beam of soft blue light surrounded David. He felt a strange tingling sensation, but wasn't afraid. Somehow, he knew this light wouldn't hurt him. Slowly, he began to rise off the ground, lifted gently by the mysterious beam. Inside the craft, David found himself standing in a room that seemed impossible. The walls appeared to be made of the same liquid light as the outside of the ship, but they felt solid when he touched them. Strange symbols floated in the air around him, glowing softly and moving like they were alive. That's when he saw her. She stood about 6 feet tall with skin that seemed to glow from within, like moonlight on water. Her hair was long and silver, moving gently even though there was no wind. But it was her eyes that captured David's attention completely. They were large and deep blue, like looking into the ocean on a clear day. When she looked at him, David felt like she could see straight into his soul. "Please don't be afraid," she said in perfect English, though her voice sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. "I mean you no harm." David's mouth opened, but no words came out. He was standing face to face with what could only be an alien being, and all he could do was stare and wonder. Everything he had dreamed about since childhood was happening right now. "I know this is difficult to understand," she continued, her voice gentle and kind. "My name is Luna, and I come from a world very far from here. I've been watching your planet for some time, listening to your radio signals. Tonight, I detected someone actively searching for beings like me." David finally found his voice. "You're real," he whispered. "You're actually real." Luna smiled, and her whole face seemed to light up. "Yes, I'm real, and I've been hoping to meet someone like you, someone who looks to the stars and wonders if anyone is looking back." After that first incredible night, David could barely sleep every time he closed his eyes. He saw Luna's glowing face and heard her gentle voice. Part of him wondered if it had all been a dream, but the recorded signal on his computer proved it was real. He had met an actual alien being, and she had promised to see him again. 3 days passed before Luna returned. David was working his usual night shift, constantly glancing out the window and checking the sky. Around midnight, he saw the familiar dancing light approaching the observatory. His heart raced with excitement and nervousness. This time, Luna didn't take him aboard her ship. Instead, she appeared outside the observatory, her form shimmering slightly in the cool mountain air. She seemed more comfortable now, less formal than during their first meeting. "I wasn't sure you would want to see me again," she said softly. "Many beings become frightened after first contact." David shook his head quickly. "Are you kidding? I've been thinking about nothing else for 3 days. I have so many questions I don't even know where to start." Luna smiled, that same warm smile that made her whole face glow. "Then let's walk, and you can ask me anything you want." They walked along a mountain path behind the observatory, away from any lights or buildings. Luna explained that her people came from a star system in what humans called the Andromeda Galaxy. Their world was called Zephyria, and it was nothing like Earth. "We learned to live in harmony with our planet thousands of years ago," Luna explained, as they sat on a large rock overlooking the valley below. "We don't have wars or hunger or pollution like your world does. But we also don't have something that you humans have in abundance." "What's that?" David asked. "Emotions," Luna said quietly. "We can feel basic things like contentment or curiosity. But the deep feelings that drive your species, love, passion, grief, hope, these are rare for us. That's why I find humans so fascinating." David was surprised. "But you seem emotional to me." "You smiled. You seemed nervous when you first arrived. Being around humans is changing me," Luna admitted. "I've been studying your planet for many months, listening to your music and your stories. Something about human emotions is infectious. I'm feeling things I've never felt before." Over the following weeks, they met almost every night. Luna would arrive after David finished his regular work, and they would go to different places around the remote mountain area. Sometimes they sat by a small lake where the stars reflected perfectly in the still water. Other times they climbed to high peaks where they could see for miles in every direction. Luna told David about her world and her people. She explained how they had evolved beyond physical needs, how they could live for thousands of years, and how they traveled between stars using technology that bent space itself. But what amazed David most was how interested she was in the simplest human things. He taught her about music, playing songs on his phone, and watching her face light up with wonder. She was particularly fascinated by sad songs, blues, and country. Music that told stories of heartbreak and loss. Your people create beauty from pain. She observed one night as they listened to an old song about a man missing his home. We have no concept like this. When we feel discomfort, we simply adjust our thoughts to remove it. But then you miss out on so much, David said. Some of the most beautiful art comes from difficult emotions. The best songs, the greatest poems, the most moving stories, they're all about people struggling with feelings. Luna nodded thoughtfully. I'm beginning to understand that. Since meeting you, I've experienced something your people might call sadness. Every time I have to leave, I feel a heaviness here. She placed her hand over her heart. It's uncomfortable, but also somehow precious. David found himself looking forward to their meetings, more than anything else in his life. During the day, while trying to sleep, he would replay their conversations in his mind. Luna's perspective on everything was so different, so fresh. She helped him see his own world in new ways. When he told her about his father's death and how much he missed him, Luna listened with an intensity that made him feel truly heard for the first time in months. Your father gave you the gift of wonder, she said. That telescope he gave you led you to discover the universe and eventually led you to me. In a way, he's still guiding your journey. David felt tears in his eyes. No one had ever helped him see his father's death as anything but a loss before. Luna also listened when he talked about his failed marriage and how lonely he had become. Your wife couldn't understand your need to search for something greater, Luna said. But that searching is what makes you special. You were meant to look beyond your world. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just running away from normal life, David admitted. There's nothing normal about what you do, Luna replied. You spend your nights listening to the universe, hoping to find friends among the stars. That takes tremendous courage. As the weeks passed, David realized something was happening to him. He was falling in love with Luna, even though he knew it was impossible. She was from another world, another species entirely. Their relationship could never be anything more than these secret nighttime meetings. But he couldn't help himself. Luna was unlike anyone he had ever met. She was brilliant and kind, curious about everything, and she looked at him like he was the most interesting person in the universe. When she laughed at his jokes, her whole body seemed to shimmer with joy. When she listened to him talk about his dreams and fears, he felt understood in a way he never had before. David began to notice that Luna was changing too. She was becoming more expressive, more emotional. Sometimes she would reach out and touch his hand when they talked, something she said her people rarely did. Other times he would catch her staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. One night, as they sat watching meteor showers streak across the sky, Luna said something that made David's heart skip. I should return to my world soon. My mission here was only supposed to last a few months, and I've already stayed longer than planned. David felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. The thought of Luna leaving, of never seeing her again, was almost unbearable. How much longer do you have? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. A few more weeks at most, Luna said sadly. My people will start to worry if I stay much longer. David nodded, but inside he was falling apart. He had finally found someone who understood him, who made him feel alive again. And now she was going to disappear forever. As they walked back toward the observatory that night, both of them were unusually quiet. David wanted to tell her how he felt, but what was the point? She was going home to another galaxy. What could he possibly say that would matter? But deep down, he was beginning to realize that some feelings are too strong to keep hidden, no matter how impossible the situation might be. The next 2 weeks passed like a blur for David. Every night with Luna felt precious. Knowing their time together was running out, he tried to memorize everything about her, the way her silver hair caught the starlight, how her eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies, the musical sound of her laugh when he told her stories about his childhood. Luna seemed different too, She was quieter than usual, often lost in thought. Sometimes David would catch her staring at him with an expression that looked almost sad. When he asked if something was wrong, she would just shake her head and change the subject on what Luna told him would be their last night together. David felt like his world was ending. He had been dreading this moment for weeks. But now that it was here, he wasn't ready. He would never be ready to say goodbye to her. "I want to show you something special," David said as Luna materialized near the observatory. "There's a place my father used to take me when I was a kid. It's about an hour's drive from here." Luna nodded silently. She seemed to understand that this night needed to be different from all the others. They drove through the winding mountain roads in David's old pickup truck. Luna sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching the landscape pass by in the moonlight. She had never ridden in a human vehicle before, and she seemed fascinated by this simple experience. The place David took her to was a hidden beach beside a mountain lake. His father had discovered it during a camping trip when David was 8 years old. It became their secret spot, where they would go to fish and talk about life and dreams. David hadn't been back since his father died. They arrived just as the eastern sky was beginning to show the first hints of dawn. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting the last stars of the night like a giant mirror. Luna gasped softly when she saw it. "It's beautiful," she whispered. They sat on a large piece of driftwood at the water's edge, watching as the sky slowly changed colors. Pink and orange began to creep across the horizon, pushing away the darkness. David had seen thousands of sunrises in his life, but watching this one with Luna made it feel like the first time. "My father brought me here when I was worried about something," David said quietly. "He told me that watching the sunrise always reminded him that no matter how dark things get, light always comes back." Luna turned to look at him. "You miss him very much, every day," David admitted. "But being with you these past weeks has helped. You've made me feel less alone than I have in years." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun climbed higher, painting the lake in brilliant shades of gold and silver. David knew he should be enjoying this perfect moment, but all he could think about was that after today, he would never see Luna again. The thought was too painful to bear. Without thinking, he looked at her beautiful, glowing face in the morning. Light and felt words escaped from his heart before his mind could stop them. "I wish I could marry her," he whispered, so quietly he thought no one could hear. But Luna heard everything. She turned to face him completely, and for the first time since he had known her, David saw tears in her eyes. They weren't like human tears. They seemed to be made of pure light, sliding down her cheeks like liquid starlight. "Yes," she said simply. David's heart stopped. "What?" "Yes," Luna repeated, her voice shaking with emotion. "My answer is yes." David stared at her in shock. "You heard what I said. I hear everything you say. Even when you think you're whispering to yourself," Luna said softly. "And I've been feeling the same impossible thing." "You have." David could barely breathe. Luna reached out and took his hands in hers. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse with gentle energy. "David, I need to tell you something. I was supposed to leave your planet 2 weeks ago. My people have been sending me messages, asking why I'm delaying my return." "Why haven't you left?" "Because of you," she said, tears still flowing down her face. "I can't bear the thought of never seeing you again. Every night when I have to leave you, I feel like part of me is being torn away. I think this is what your people call heartbreak." David felt his own eyes filling with tears. "But it's impossible. We're from different worlds, different species. How could we ever?" "I don't know," Luna interrupted, "but I know that what I feel for you is real. My people don't experience emotions like this. But you've awakened something in me that I never knew existed. When I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I never have before." David pulled her closer, and she didn't resist. For a moment, they just held each other as the sun rose fully above the mountains, bathing them both in warm, golden light. "There's something else," Luna said after a while, "something I haven't told you about my people." "What is it?" "Long ago, before my civilization became so advanced, we had ceremonies for bonding with beings from other worlds. It was rare, but not unheard of. The rituals haven't been performed in thousands of years. But the knowledge still exists. David's heart leaped. What kind of ceremonies? A way for two beings from different species to become united, to share a connection that transcends physical form. But David, it would require sacrifices from both of us. You would have to leave your human life behind, and I would have to convince my people to allow something that hasn't happened in millennia. What would happen to me? You would be transformed. Luna explained carefully. Not fully human anymore, but not like my people either. Something new, something that could exist in both worlds. But the change would be permanent. There would be no going back to the life, David looked out at the lake, his mind racing, everything he had ever known. Everyone he had ever cared about except Luna would become part of his past, his career, his home, his entire identity as a human being would change forever. But when he looked back at Luna, with her tear-streaked face glowing in the morning light, he realized he had already made his choice weeks ago. She wasn't just someone he loved, she was the missing piece of his soul he had been searching for. His entire life. How do we make it happen? He asked. Luna's eyes widened in surprise. You would really consider it, Luna. I've spent my whole life looking up at the stars and wondering if I belonged somewhere else. Maybe I was never meant to live a normal human life. Maybe I was meant to find you. She threw her arms around him, and David felt a warmth spread through his entire body. It was like being embraced by sunlight itself. There's so much we would have to figure out, Luna said. I would have to contact the Council of Elders on my world. They would need to approve the ceremony, and you would need time to think about what you're giving up. I don't need time, David said firmly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As they sat there holding each other beside the peaceful lake, watching the new day begin, David felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Maybe their love was impossible by normal standards. But nothing about their relationship had been normal from the beginning. They had found each other across the vastness of space. Two lonely souls who understood each other perfectly despite coming from different worlds. If that wasn't a miracle, David didn't know what was. So what happens now? He asked. Luna smiled through her tears. Now we find out if love really can conquer anything. The week following their confession was both the most exciting and terrifying time of David's life. Luna had to contact her people and explain the situation, which meant revealing that she had formed an emotional bond with a human. David could only imagine how that conversation would go. During the day, while Luna was communicating with her world, David tried to continue his normal routine. But everything felt different now. His small apartment seemed even smaller. His work at the observatory felt less important, and the future he had always imagined for himself was completely gone. 3 days after their talk by the lake, Luna appeared at the observatory looking both excited and nervous. I've spoken with the Council of Elders, she said, her voice trembling slightly. They want to meet you? David's stomach dropped. Meet me? How? Not in person, Luna explained quickly. But they want to communicate with you directly before they make any decisions about the bonding ceremony. That night, Luna took David aboard her ship for the second time. The interior still amazed him. Walls that seemed to be made of flowing light, symbols floating in the air, and technology beyond anything humans had ever dreamed of. But tonight, there was something new in the center of the main room. A circular platform rose from the floor, covered in glowing crystals that pulsed with soft blue light. Above it, a holographic image flickered to life, showing 5 beings who looked similar to Luna, but older and more formal. David of Earth. One of them spoke, and somehow David could understand perfectly even though he knew they weren't speaking English. I am Elder Cosmos, leader of the High Council. Luna has told us of her unusual request. David's mouth went dry, but he forced himself to speak. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. The bonding ceremony Luna described has not been performed in over 3,000 years. Another elder said, it was created for a time when our people travel more freely between worlds. Are you certain you understand what you are asking? I think so, David replied. Luna explained that I would be transformed into something between human and your people. The transformation is only part of it. Elder Cosmos continued. If you undergo this ceremony, you will become the first hybrid of our species in millennia. You will be neither fully human nor fully Zephyrian. You will be something entirely new. A third elder leaned forward. More importantly, you will become a bridge between our two worlds. This is not simply about your personal feelings for Luna. If we approve this ceremony, you would carry the responsibility of eventual contact between our civilizations. David felt the weight of their words. This wasn't just about his love for Luna anymore. He would be representing all of humanity in some way. I understand the responsibility, David said carefully, but I believe that understanding between our people would be a good thing for both worlds. The elders discussed among themselves in their own language, their voices sounding like music. Finally, Elder Cosmos turned back to David. We have decided to allow the ceremony, but only under certain conditions. You must have time to fully consider what you are giving up, and there must be at least one human who knows the truth and can serve as a connection to your world. David's heart leaped, but then he realized the problem. Who could he possibly tell? Who would believe him? Over the next few days, David struggled with this requirement. He couldn't tell his ex-wife. She already thought he was crazy for spending so much time alone with his telescopes. He had no close friends left after years of isolating himself with his work. But then he thought of Dr. Riley Chen, his research partner at the observatory. Riley was brilliant, open-minded, and had always been kind to him. If anyone might believe an impossible story about aliens and love, it would be her. David spent 2 days working up the courage to approach Riley. Finally, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, he asked her to stay after their shift ended. Riley, I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise you'll hear me out before you decide I've lost my mind. Riley looked concerned. David, you've been acting strange for weeks. What's going on? David took a deep breath and told her everything about the signal he detected, about meeting Luna, about their growing relationship, and about the choice he was facing. Riley listened without interrupting, her expression changing from concern to disbelief to amazement. When David finished, Riley was quiet for a long time. You're telling me you've been meeting with an alien woman for weeks, and now you want to transform into some kind of hybrid being so you can marry her. I know how it sounds, David said desperately, but it's all true. I can prove it. That night, David brought Riley to meet Luna. Watching his colleague's face when Luna materialized in front of them was almost worth all the stress of the past few days. Riley stood frozen, her mouth open, staring at Luna's glowing form. Hello, Dr. Chen, Luna said gently. David has told me so much about you. Riley fainted. When she woke up a few minutes later, lying on the grass outside the observatory, the first words out of her mouth were, That really happened, didn't it? Over the next hour, Luna patiently answered all of Riley's questions about her world, her people, and her relationship with David. By the end of the conversation, Riley was convinced not only that Luna was real, but that David's love for her was the most genuine thing she had ever witnessed. I've never seen you this happy, Riley told David privately. In all the years we've worked together, you've always seemed like you were searching for something. Now you've found it, but am I crazy for wanting to give up being human? David asked. Riley thought for a moment. David, you've never really fit into the human world anyway. You've always been looking beyond it, searching for something more. Maybe this is what you were meant to find. With Riley's support, David felt more confident about his decision. But there were still practical matters to consider. How would he explain his disappearance from Earth? What would happen to his job, his apartment, his entire life? Luna and Riley worked together to create a plan. They would stage David's death in a hiking accident in the mountains. Riley would handle the paperwork and make sure no one searched too hard for a body that would never be found. It wasn't perfect, but it would give David the clean break he needed. The night before the ceremony was scheduled to take place, David sat alone in his apartment, looking around at the life he was about to leave behind. His father's pictures on the wall, his books about astronomy, the telescope that had started his journey to the stars. He felt sad to leave it all, but he also felt something else, excitement. Tomorrow, he would become something that had never existed before. He would be united with the woman he loved in a way that transcended anything humans had ever experienced, and maybe, someday, he would help bring two worlds together. His phone buzzed with a text from Riley. "Are you sure about this?" David typed back, "I've never been more sure of anything." But even as he sent the message, a small part of him wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. What if the transformation went wrong? What if he couldn't adapt to his new existence? What if Luna's people changed their minds? He pushed these doubts away. Love required faith, and faith meant taking risks. Tomorrow, he would find out if the risk was worth it. As David packed the few items he wanted to take with him to his new life, he thought about something his father had told him years ago. Sometimes the best discoveries happen when you're brave enough to explore the unknown. Tomorrow, David would explore the ultimate unknown. He would discover what it meant to love someone so much that you're willing to become someone completely new. The morning of the ceremony arrived with perfect weather. The sky was crystal clear, without a single cloud in sight. David woke up in his apartment for the last time as a fully human being. He felt nervous, excited, and terrified all at once. Riley arrived early to help him with the final preparations. She had brought official papers that would make his disappearance look like a tragic hiking accident. They practiced the story one more time. David had gone hiking alone in a dangerous part of the mountains and never returned. His body was presumably lost in a deep ravine. "You know there's no going back after today," Riley said quietly as they drove toward the meeting place Luna had chosen. "I know," David replied, "but I've thought about this every day for weeks. This is what I want." The location Luna had selected was unlike anywhere David had ever been. Hidden deep in the mountains, accessible only by a rough hiking trail, was a circular clearing surrounded by ancient stone formations. The rocks were covered in symbols that looked similar to the ones David had seen on Luna's ship. "My people visited this place long ago," Luna explained when they arrived. "It's one of the few spots on Earth where the energy needed for the ceremony still exists." Elder Cosmos and two other members of the High Council had traveled to Earth for the ceremony. Their ship, invisible to human eyes, hovered silently above the clearing. The elders appeared as shimmering holographic forms, their presence both majestic and intimidating. "David of Earth," Elder Cosmos spoke, "are you prepared to leave your old life behind and become something new?" "I am," David answered, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. "And Luna, daughter of Zephyria, are you prepared to share your essence with a being from another world, knowing that you two will be changed by this bond?" "I am," Luna replied, her voice filled with certainty. Riley stood at the edge of the clearing, watching everything with wide eyes. She would be the only human witness to something that had never happened before in the history of either species. The ceremony began at sunset. Luna and David stood in the center of the stone circle while the elders chanted in their musical language. The ancient stones began to glow with the same soft blue light David had seen on Luna's ship. The air itself seemed to shimmer and dance around them. "Give me your hands," Luna said softly. When David took her hands in his, he felt a warm tingling sensation that started in his fingers and slowly spread up his arms. The feeling wasn't painful, but it was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if every cell in his body was waking up for the first time. Luna's eyes began to glow brighter, and David realized that his must be doing the same thing. He could feel her thoughts touching his mind, not intruding but offering to share. Without hesitation, he opened his heart and mind to her completely. What happened next was impossible to describe in human words. David felt his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his physical body. He could suddenly sense things he had never been able to perceive before. The energy flowing between the stars, the magnetic field of the earth, the thoughts and feelings of every living thing in the forest around them. But more than that, he could feel Luna's presence inside his own mind and heart. Her memories became his memories. Her knowledge became his knowledge. He understood her language, her culture, her world as if he had lived there his entire life. At the same time, David felt his physical body changing. His skin began to emit a soft glow similar to Luna's, Though not as bright, his eyes changed color, becoming the same deep blue as hers. He grew slightly taller, and his hair took on a silver tint. The most amazing part wasn't the physical transformation, though it was the way his mind expanded. David could suddenly understand concepts that had been beyond human comprehension. Just moments before, he grasped the mathematics behind interstellar travel, the science of energy manipulation, and the deep philosophical truths that Luna's people had discovered over thousands of years. But he was still David. His memories, his personality, his love for Luna, all of that remained unchanged. He had become something new while staying true to who he had always been. When the glowing light finally faded, David and Luna stood together as something unprecedented, the first hybrid couple. In galactic history, they were bonded not just emotionally, but at the deepest level of existence itself. "How do you feel?" Luna asked, though David could sense her concern and love even before she spoke. "Different," David said, amazed by how his own voice sounded, richer somehow, with musical undertones he had never had before. "But still me." "Just more." Elder Cosmos approached them with what David now recognized as approval and wonder in his expression. "The ceremony is complete," the elder announced. "You are now bonded for all time, across all distances and all dimensions. May your union bring wisdom and peace to both your worlds." Riley walked over to them, tears streaming down her face. "David, are you still you?" David smiled, and Riley gasped as she saw how his entire face seemed to glow with inner light. "I'm still me, Riley, just with some new abilities and a much better understanding of the universe." Over the following hours, David learned about his new capabilities. He could communicate telepathically with Luna across any distance. He could see energy patterns invisible to human eyes. He could even, with concentration, travel short distances by manipulating space itself. But perhaps most importantly, he could now survive in both worlds. He could visit Luna's home planet without any special equipment, and he could return to Earth whenever needed. "What happens now?" Riley asked as the ceremony concluded and the elders prepared to depart. "Now we begin the real work," Luna said, taking David's hand. "We're going to spend time traveling between our worlds, learning how to help our people understand each other. It might take years, maybe decades," David added, "but eventually, we want to help establish peaceful contact between Earth and Zephyria." Riley nodded thoughtfully. "And I'll be your contact here on Earth, if you're willing," David said. "Someday, when humanity is ready, you'll be one of the first people to officially meet Luna's people." As Luna's ship prepared to take them on their first journey together to Zephyria, David looked back at Riley and the mountain clearing where his old life had ended, and his new one had begun. 6 months ago, he had been a lonely astronomer, listening to static from space and wondering if anyone was listening back. Now he was married to an alien princess, transformed into a being that could bridge to worlds, and embarking on adventures beyond anything he had ever imagined. His father had been right. The best discoveries really did happen when you were brave enough to explore the unknown. David had explored the ultimate unknown and found not just love, but a purpose greater than he had ever dreamed possible. As they lifted off into the star-filled sky, David squeezed Luna's hand and smiled. Their love story had begun with a whispered wish, but it would continue across galaxies, proving that love really could conquer any distance, any difference, any impossibility. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but David had found the greatest wonder of all, someone who loved him enough to help him become more than he ever thought possible. And together, they would help two worlds do the same.